Greetings, my friends. Very interesting subject matter for you today. It's, of course, what everybody's waiting for. Just like Angel, everybody wants more information about Rahu and Ketu. And everybody kind of feels sad when the authors and the classical astrologers don't care that much about Rahu and Ketu. Well, now today's your day. Oddly placed in the second chapter is a brief chunk of 3 verses catching up on details that were many of the fundamental details that were skipped with Rahu and Ketu. Why is it so? One can conjecture that some other later author put it in. Probably not, in my personal opinion. Probably it's more along the lines of this author, Mantreshwar, said in the beginning that he's teaching ancient systems. He didn't make up the systems. And so the ancient systems probably weren't mentioning Rahu and Ketu, and then he added in afterwards. Or maybe his organization was just poor and he forgot about them, but I also doubt that. So anyway, now he's going to give us information about Rahu and Ketu, which he has given us about the other 7 planets, or these 7 planets. Remember, Rahu and Ketu are not planets. They're called shadows or darkness. So here we go. Ready? Let's see where we start. I think we'll start with Rahu. So he's going to give you, you remember maybe a few months ago now, the second part of this chapter on the planets, he described the sun looks like this. Reddish complexion, brown reddish complexion, this kind of height, this kind of arms, this kind of glance, this kind of eyes, this kind of hair, these kind of clothes. And then the moon, same exact thing, goes through those details for the moon. Mars goes through the details for Mars. Remember that section? Now he's going to do that for Rahu and Ketu. So he says, Nila Dutir Dirgatanu Kuvarna Pami Sapashanamata Sahika Asatyavadi Kapati Charahu Kushti Pranindati Buddhihina. And this also, today's session is going to be Sanskrit rich, because the Sanskrit words that he uses in these statements are very interesting. So first of all, what does he say about Rahu? He says Rahu is oddly dark blue and of poor complexion. He's long-limbed or tall, voracious and territorial, heretically rebellious, nocturnal, materialistic, dishonest, insulting, and without prudence or planning. So it's important if you want to interpret Rahu. This is what Rahu is like. So first of all, Rahu has a color. All the planets have colors, which knowing the color gives you a feeling for what the planet is like, but also they impart this color or flavor or spin onto whatever they affect. Like, for example, that's what it means when Saturn is dark. Saturn imparts a dark flavor onto whatever it affects. Venus is sparkly and multicolored. That's what it does to whatever house it's in or whatever planet it conjoins. So Rahu's color is called Kushti, which means odd. And there's several implications of it. Ku is always a negative prefix in Sanskrit. It means kind of undesirable. And words that start with that sound ka, they're usually not pleasant. So Kushti means there's something wrong with it. It's like an unsettling color. If you've ever had the opportunity to be actually in an eclipse, because remember, that's what Rahu is. It's the point at which the moon and sun can have an eclipse. If you've ever been in an eclipse, you'll notice, I believe you'll notice right away, at least one of the things that I noticed right away is, man, it looks really weird. I can't put my finger on it, but there's like this weird purple, vibrant, ultraviolet, infrared. I have no idea what's going on here with the color, but it looks really weird. So Rahu has this symbolism of having a unsettling or weird color to it. That's the color, just like Saturn imparts darkness into whatever it affects. Rahu imparts this oddness to things. And it's odd Nila. Nila is like Saturn's color, which means dark blue, black. So it's got a blackness like Saturn, but Saturn's blackness is plain blackness. Rahu's blackness is weird blackness. Again, this is very obvious. This is an eclipse. It's a weird blackness. That's Rahu's color, is a weird blackness. So it's different than Saturn's darkness, which is more signifying depression or disinterest or ignoring, disengagement. That's Saturn's blackness. Rahu's blackness is more like confusion, unknowing, inability to see. This is what Kushti Nila means. So this, the nature of Rahu is it imparts confusion and difficulty seeing things. So that's what we mean here about Rahu is oddly dark blue. And poor complexion, Kuvarna. So Varna actually literally means the color of something. But it means the surface. In English, you got the word varnish, which is based on the Sanskrit word varna. It's like the color or the shine or the glow or the outer surface of something is its varna. We also use the word varna to refer to the social status because that's the outer function of a person. The outer function is their varna. How do you function in the world externally? Oh, you have this type of career, you're this type of varna. So here, Kuvarna can also mean that Rahu has no social status. Or remember that here's the prefix Ku, which is unpleasant or bad. It doesn't really fit in society. That will be mentioned elsewhere in this same text in specific words. So we don't. That's one of the implications of this word. But the unique contribution of this word is that Rahu's skin is not really pretty. It has a bad complexion. So this all these words here, Niladyuti, Kuvarna, and Kushti, refer to Rahu's skin. So Kuvarna means it's not pretty skin. It's weird skin. Kushti also means it's weird, it's blemished. It's odd. There's blemishes. Some translators say there's leprosy. Some, you know, that Michael Jackson type of leprosy where your skin, the pigmentation is weird. Some say that. Some say acne or something like that, like a lot of acne. This kind of things are implied by Kushti and Kuvarna. Bad complexion. Niladyuti. But a Kushta Niladyuti, a confusingly dark situation, that's not so pleasant. That's Rahu's nature. Niladyuti Dirga Tanu. His Tanu or his body is Dirga. Dirga means it goes really far. Durga means it's very, very, very big. You can't get past it. You know, Durga, the famous word Durga, the name for the goddess. You can't get past her. That's what it means. Dirga means something that's very far. So if your body is Dirga, that means it's long or tall. So Rahu's Ayurvedic constitution, therefore, is inferred to be Vata like Saturn, because Vata produces Dirga Tanu. Vata produces a taller body, thinner, longer, elongated body. And this is what Rahu does to things in general. It will inflate them. So here Rahu is also similar with Saturn, or not similar, but can be compared to Saturn. In the darkness, Rahu can be compared to Saturn. They're both dark. in the longness or the vata nature of they can be compared, but they're not necessarily similar or same. Saturn will actually dry things out. So Saturn will dry things out and therefore stretch them a bit. Stretch them and thin them. That's what Saturn does to things. So whether it's affecting your body or your budget or whatever, that's what it does. It stretches it. Thins it and stretches it. So you'll be spending less per day and having more days that you have money for if Saturn is affecting your finances. Rahu is not stretching and thinning. Rahu is just expanding. Will make things expansive. Now, but not like Jupiter. So here it's like Jupiter. Jupiter will also expand things. But Rahu is doing the expansion in an airy way, like filling up a balloon. Jupiter is doing expansion in a fatty way, like growing something. So Rahu's expansion is prone to deflation also. So if you have economies rise under Rahu, then they'll fall quickly as well. Whereas if you have economies rise under Jupiter, then they'll be more stable. So take that in mind also if your economy or your financial status is rising in a dasha or bhukti or major transit of Rahu, don't expect it to stay that way for a long time. Whereas if it's rising because of Jupiter's indicators, then you can expect that to stick around a bit more. So this is what we get from the fact that it's Dirghatanu. It makes things bigger. Niladyuti Kushti means it makes things confusing and difficult to perceive. Kuvarna means it makes them a bit unpleasant. And Dirghatanu means Rahu makes things unstably bigger. Alrighty? Let's get through the whole verse and then I'll collect questions about it. The next word here is Pami. Now, this is a very interesting word. I think there's like I said about Phaladipika, I actually think there's only really one English translator. Well, there's like 4 or 5 copies. There's 4 or 5 English translations available, but they're all just plagiarizations of this one Subramanian, I think. He says leprosy for this, which again is redundant. It is possible to make it mean that. But the more meaningful contribution of the word Pami means a person that constantly drinks. So you could take that literally. I just thought first time I actually said this out loud, it actually sounds like an alcoholic. This is also useful for Rahu. Pami, a person who's always drinking. So a person who is very voracious, I have it down in the translation. Rahu is very voracious and will constantly intake. And Pami also means they're very possessive or territorial of things. Because they're taking for themselves is Pami. So that's Rahu's nature. It's very voracious and hungry and what's the word for assuming possession of something, taking possession of something? Whatever that word is would be a good word, possibly better than territorial. Rahu is the type who takes possession of things and consumes them, which is what happens with an eclipse. Rahu takes possession of the sun and consumes it and then leaves it quickly. So far we've got it's oddly dark blue, poor complexion, long-limbed or big, and voracious. So whatever Rahu affects, it's going to get colored by this quality of voracity, hunger, wanting more of it, having an appetite, and being a bit possessive. So my personal notes on this is treat Rahu a lot like you would treat a malefic planet in terms of what houses you do and don't want it in. So especially third house is an interesting spot for Rahu. because it goes with Pami. Third house itself is Pami. It's got your appetite, it's got your lust, it's got your ambitions. Third house, it's got your nature to conquer, your will to conquer, and things like that. And Rahu also represents the same thing, so it synergizes to the third house. Well, but ninth house, it's the opposite. So Rahu in the ninth house is more disruptive. You can think of house placements for Rahu now that you have some clarity about what Rahu represents. All right, so the kind of thing where it's not Venusian, Rahu is not really partnery. Rahu is taking for itself, consuming. So that's the word Pami. The next word after Pami is Sapashanda Mata. So Pashanda means a person that is heretical. Sapashanda Mata means he has a heretical mind. Literally. What does heretical mean? It means you go against the established concept. So for example, if the concept is homosexuality is bad, then a heretic will say homosexuality is fine. If the concept is homosexuality is fine, then the heretic will say, oh no, homosexuality is bad. They go against what the established thing is. So if you're heretical to Christianity, then you are antagonistic to the tenets of Christianity. If you're heretical to Hollywood, then you're antagonistic to the tenets of Hollywood. So it's not that Rahu is irreligious, as people wrongly assume. He's heretical. To give this some definite clarity, the Vedic terminology uses Sapashanda to mean Buddhist or Jain. So the word doesn't mean irreligious, but it means heretical to our set of norms, opposite to our set of norms. So actually Rahu can produce intensely religious people. If the heresy and heretism is directed towards the secular world. Always remember with symbolism, the coin has two sides. So if you have something which represents this side of the coin, it also affects the other side of the coin. So if you have Rahu represents a heretic, then that will affect your orthodoxy, or how will you conform to or fit in with something. So anyway, Rahu is heretical. This is really important to understand Rahu. Sapashanda Mata. Mata also implies he has intellect. So Rahu is smart for finding out how something is dumb. Rahu will not be a blind follower by any means. Rahu is the opposite of the blind follower. Rahu is basically the opposite of a follower. But not by being a leader, just by being heretical. What you said is dumb. What you said is stupid. That's a Rahu statement. He doesn't necessarily have something better to say or an alternative, but he just points out that your way of thinking is dumb. Again, similar to Saturn. Hence they say Rahu Vachani. Rahu's a lot like Saturn. He is a lot like Saturn, but Saturn is Saturn and Rahu is Rahu. Rahu is more like rebellious. That's why I put heretically rebellious. Sapashanda Mata means he's going to be inclined to go against the government. He's going to be inclined to go against the religion he or she was born into. He's probably going to put a bumper sticker on his car that says question authority. If Rahu is driving a Ford around, he's probably going to have a bumper sticker that says question authority on it. He's probably going to be inclined, to like music that most people don't like. He's not going to listen to mainstream music. He's not going to wear mainstream clothes because he's Sapashanda Mata. He likes to go against the accepted thing. So if you have Rahu in this house, then it'll go, or that house, it will go against the themes of that house, meaning you won't have normal fortunes with that house. You'll have heretical fortunes with it. Or you'll be rebellious about this type of thing. Or a trendsetter, not a follower about this type of thing. Okay, Rahu is oddly dark blue, of poor complexion, long-limbed and tall, voracious and territorial, heretically rebellious, and then the next thing is Sahika, which I'm going to say is nocturnal. Rahu is nocturnal, means the type of person that doesn't really like to be awake during the day and sleep at night. The person who winds up sleeping during the day and being awake at night. Rahu likes to function at night. Rahu likes darkness. Rahu likes when most people are not around because it's a pashanda. Doesn't like most people. But this word sahika is very funny. Some people say it means he has the hiccups, because hikka means hiccup. So this, but hikka means nocturnal creatures like birds, like owls. So it means Rahu is like the owl. He's like an owl, so he's not very social and he's nocturnal. There's another thing about Rahu. He's not very social. He may temporarily integrate with other people, but he doesn't really form relationships. It's like an owl. Sahika, if you want to think it means hiccups, maybe it means that Rahu tends to stutter. Or the other important implication of Sahika, if on the concept of it being hiccups, is Rahu's progress is like this, like hiccups. It's not like a Jupiter, which is like this, or Saturn, which is like this. Rahu is unsteady. Then the next word is asatyavadi, which I just translated as materialistic, but let's talk about it. It's a very interesting word. Vak literally means a word. So your vadi is somebody who says something. So it's a way of saying ism, like in English we have ism, communism, capitalism, right? I don't know, other isms. In Sanskrit, vadi is a way of achieving that same meaning. Somebody who says something. So you have like Advaita Vadi, you have Mayavadi, you have Brahmavadi. There's people that are spiritualists or non-dualists, etc. Now, Asatyavadi means somebody who is a affectist. Okay, Sat is the cause, and the thing that Sat produces is the effect. It's called Asat. So the cause, or the Sat, is the consciousness, and the Asat is the form, the thing which consciousness produces. So Asatyavadi is somebody who believes in form, not substance. So that's Rahu's nature. Materialistic. They are interested in, I could even say hedonistic. I was going to say hedonistic for Asatyavadi. It's another implication of Asatyavadi. And another implication is that he lies, but the next word is going to make that contribution, so we don't have to bring it in this word. Sat, because it's the cause, it means the true thing. And then the asat, or the effect, is the byproduct. So consciousness is the true thing, and then the form is the byproduct. And so hence the word sat and asat also tends to mean real and unreal, or true and false. So asatyavadi also means somebody who speaks falsely. Their words are false. So Rahu is false. That means he'll present you something, but it's not real. You'll lose it, or you'll find out that it's not what you thought it was. This is why typically, like everybody says, Rahu Dasha, you get things in the beginning, you lose them in the end. Because also the expansion of Rahu is Dirghatanu. It's like expanding like a balloon which pops. So you won't find Rahu giving rise to interest in the sat. Rather, you'll find Rahu gives rise to interest in asat. So not in the cause, but in the effect. Rahu gives interest in the effect, not the cause. Rahu doesn't care about causes. He wants the effects. He wants the results. And so Rahu is an externally oriented planet, a product-oriented planet. It doesn't really get philosophical. It'll be heretical and unconcerned with the philosophy behind something. It's concerned with the effect of things. And so it's materialistic or externally oriented. So also the word asatyavadi means a liar, but the next word says kapati, which means that asatyavadi should mean something else, because kapati means he's dishonest or a liar. So that's why we'll have asatyavadi mean materialistic, kapati means dishonest. Then the next thing is praninda. Ninda means to criticize. Para means somebody else. So paraninda is to insult, to criticize somebody else. So this also, I've seen Rahu described when translating this verse as hypocritical, but I don't think it's a very clear way of translating it, but it does bring up a point. Rahu's ninda is directed to para, to others, not to itself. So in that sense, it's hypocritical. Now, these verses, this whole text is very, very messy. It's a 14th century text. It hasn't been well preserved by, devoted religious traditions like Puranas and things like that. It's just a 14th century book on astrology. To be honest, I'm sitting here correcting a bunch of words in the text. I don't know if you can hinge important interpretations based on one letter, is this and not that, but it's the text that I have at least is pra nindati, which actually means the superior. But it could be another meaning of this, because of the way that the a works. Another meaning of this is not just that he criticizes others, but that Rahu likes to criticize superiors. So again, he's heretical and he likes to criticize others and he likes to criticize superiors. That's why I think he definitely has a bumper sticker in his car that says question authority or overthrow the government or something. That's Rahu's nature. He's very rebellious and revolutionary and insulting. Rahu's insulting. And finally, buddhihina. See, this one had to be corrected. The text was buddhina, which means it doesn't fit the meter anymore. Buddhihina means, somebody will say it means he's not smart, but it doesn't mean that he's not smart. Because if he's not smart, then how can he be sapashanda? How can he be asatyavadi, kapati, paranindati? You have to be smart to be able to insult somebody else. You have to be smart to be able to criticize something else. You have to be smart to be able to be different. So Rahu is very different, very critical, very insulting. So he can't be dumb. But he has but buddhi is your ability to plan things out, be cautious, think in advance. That type of intellect Rahu lacks. So Rahu is without prudence, without planning, without forethought. It's very spur of the moment, from the gut, on your sleeve. Everything is just, if you feel it, do it. That's the nature of Rahu. Okay? Any questions? Nila dutir dirgatanu kuvarna pami sapashanda mata sahika asatyavadi kapati charahu kushti pra nindati buddhihina. Rahu is oddly dark blue and of poor complexion, long-limbed or tall, voracious and territorial, heretically rebellious, nocturnal, materialistic, dishonest, insulting, and without proper prudence or planning. Man, Rahu, what a jerk. No, just kidding. All right, I can't really see anything Let me make it a little bigger. I will take questions about Rahu. Let's see what we got. And I'm just at random, okay? I've heard from others who practice directly from the Vedas. Who practices directly from the Vedas? I don't understand, Zena. There's no astrology in the Vedas except how to perform rituals. There's nothing about horoscopic astrology. But anyway, that the nodes conjunct Jupiter is a really good thing. What is your take? Just try to figure this out. Rahu is heretical. Jupiter is law. The nodes conjunct Jupiter is called Chandal Dosh, which means that the person will be lawless. Is that a good thing or not? Really depends upon what that Jupiter signifies in the person's chart. But generally speaking, it's going to give the flavor of a person who is heretical, very heretical. Maybe that's great, but most of the time it just indicates heresy. Heresy can be great in certain circumstances. Let's see, any questions? Samurai, you got any questions you think are good? Oh my God, Cut Devi is biting her tongue. I feel very called out with Rahu on my ascendant. You wild woman. Actually, a lot of people who are into astrology have Rahu or Ketu on their ascendant. I would say it's 1 out of 5 charts that I do. Any questions? I can't really look through them. Yes, CJ, I talked a lot about that. The similarity between Rahu and Saturn. Alf, is Rahu any good? All I hear is negative. Alf, disappointed. I'm saying this, if you're heretical to the right thing, that's great. Is Rahu any good at all? Is a gun good? It's not really inherently a good thing. It's a tool that's meant to kill people. But you could also defend with a gun. So is Rahu or Saturn good? Well, they don't represent pleasant things. But in the right circumstances, the unpleasant thing is needed. So, for example, if you have if your Rahu is so weak, then you will never be able to defy anything. So you'll just be pushed around by everybody all the time. Also, you'll never be able to just take a risk. You'll never be able to jump up and do something daring. Stuff like that. Mostly, you'll never be able to be different if your Rahu is really weak. Is that good? No, it's not so good. You should be different. You should be unique. Is it easy? No, it's not easy to be unique. All right, anyway, I'm going to go on. If I missed good questions, I'm really sorry. If you notice good questions, you could save them and maybe copy them and paste them in when I say any questions. Usually Samurai does that, but anybody can do it if you like. And then also you can answer each other. Like everybody should know the way I'm going to answer Ayush. So you could just answer. Yeah, I think Rahu is very hustler culture. Loannis wants to know what constitutes a weak or strong Rahu. I have actual videos dedicated to how you figure that out. So look through my channel or just Google Victicara dignity or Victicara strength of planets, and you'll get those videos. And then we go on. So the next one is about Ketu. Raktogra Drishti Vishavag Adeha Sashastra Patitas. And this one, I don't know if this line is corrupted or if it should be read like this. Sa Shastra Patitascha Ketu. But then it should probably be Sa Shastra. So there's something wrong with this line, but it's not that important. The meaning is still clear. Raktogra Drishti Vishavaka Deha Sa Shastra Patitascha Ketu Dhumra Dutir Dhuma Paeva Nityam. This line is really cool. Dhumra Dutir Dhuma Paeva Nityam Pranankitangascha Krisho Nirshangsa. So what it means is this. Ketu is fiercely red-eyed. That's very interesting. Rahu's eyes were not described. That's also interesting, isn't it? But Ketu's eyes are described as being Rakta, which is red, and Ugra, which is fierce. So this is giving more of a Mars feel. Ketu's eyes are fiercely red. What does that mean? Is he lovey-dovey? No. So whatever Ketu influences is going to gain this fierce harshness to outlook to it. A fierce and a harsh outlook to it. So is Ketu a teddy bear? Is Ketu a pillow? Is Ketu a comfortable blanket or a bed? Absolutely not. Ketu is a bed of nails. Ketu is a rock. Ketu is a weapon. Ketu is a sword. Ketu is fierce and sharp. Raktogra Drishti, he's fiercely red-eyed. He looks at you, you'll be scared. Vishavak. Visha means poison and Vak means words. So he's venom-tongued, like a serpent tongue. Vishavak, does he speak sweetly? No. He speaks venomously. So he's like Rahu. Rahu is insulting and heretical. Ketu is also insulting, not a pleasant speaker, not tactful. And then Adeha. This was also corrupted. It was called Agradeha, which would break everything. So it's corrected here to Adeha, which means without a body. Disembodied. Disembodied. So Ketu is disembodied. What does this mean for your work in astrology when you're working with Ketu in a chart? It will remove the physicality of something. Ketu will take away the deha, the physical form of something. Rahu is the opposite. Rahu is a satyavadi. It will give a focus to the external form of something, whereas Ketu is adeha. It will remove the physical nature of the thing. So it will make things disappear or go away. So if something doesn't have a physicality to it, then it's not really solidified. So Ketu is like this unsettled or unsolidified, intangible. So Ketu's influence on things is to make them more intangible, unstable, unsolidified. Rahu is also unstable. But Rahu gains the instability by removing something from its root. Ketu gains the instability by retracting everything into the root. And then therefore the form becomes unstable. So this is what the word adeha means. Also, Ketu, adeha, if you have no body, it means you have no home. Remember in Bhagavatam, the king's body is symbolized by his home, his city. If you have no deha, that means homeless also. So Ketu is unsettled, it's vagrant. It's wandering. Or ghostly. It's another important concept to bear in mind when you're thinking about what is Ketu's flavor. What does Ketu, if Ketu is influencing something, what kind of influence is it? It's ghostly, disembodied. And then Sashastra. Astra means a weapon. Shastra means the use of a weapon. Sashastra means he wants to use his weapons. So it means violent. This is another way that Ketu is like Rahu, is like Mars. Ketu vat Kuja. Kuja vat Ketu, Shani vat Rahu is the saying. Ketu is like Mars, Rahu is like Saturn. So Ketu is venom-tongued, venomous, and intent on using weapons. So Shastra, he bears weapons. Another meaning of it is that he wants to scare. He's scary. So for example, like a dog showing teeth. The dog showing its teeth is very Ketu experience. If you get a dog growling at you and showing its teeth at you, then the feeling that you have is Ketu. That's what Ketu feels like. Or if worse, if you have a person coming at you with a knife or a bat or something or a gun, that feeling is Ketu. The imminence of something very dangerous and sudden. And Patita. Best translation for Patita is ignoble. It's actually a great translation for Patita, if I may say so myself. Literally, Patita means to be low or fallen. It's generally being taken to mean they don't have a varna. They don't have a social. They don't have a social contribution. So they're patita. They make no social contribution. But the word ignoble, and therefore their behavior is. We have the words like low, base. So the word ignoble covers that, and also covers the fact that they have no social. They have no varna. Because noble means to have a varna. Ignoble means you don't have a varna, and then your behavior, which is ignominious, means kind of vile behavior or uncultured behavior. So Ketu's behavior is uncultured. Rahu's behavior is also wild. But they're very similar because they're two parts of the same being. But Rahu is more like wild and externalized, and Ketu is more like intense. Rahu is explosive, but Ketu is intensifying. The difference is intensifying is like compacting things, and Rahu is expanding things. You get the same feeling at the end of something being magnified, but Rahu magnifies by and Ketu by. So neither of them are very cultured. Neither Rahu and Ketu are cultured. Neither of them are really following rules. They're both near grunty. They don't follow rules. They do whatever they want. So far we got half the verse. Raktogra Drishti Vishavak Adeha Sashastra Patitas Ketu. Then there's next, which I think is poetically very nicely composed, this third line. Dhumra Dutir Dhuma Paeva Nityam. So his complexion is Dhuma, and even the word Dhoom is so cool with the English connotation of doom. Dhumra Duti, complexion is doom, and Dhumapa, he's drinking doom. Eva Nityam, constantly. He's drinking deep doom constantly. So what's doom? Doom means smoke. In Sanskrit, doom means smoke. It probably gets to mean, I don't know how it means. Maybe it's not cognate to English, but it's just a fun connotation for an English speaker to hear the word doom, because smoke is ominous. So in that sense, it's okay to maintain that connotation. So his complexion is smoky. This means Ketu is ominous. And like Rahu, Rahu was Kushti Nila, a confusing darkness. Ketu is smoke, which is fog. So neither Ketu or Rahu are easily seen. They're covered in darkness or smoke or fog or mist. So again, like, you know, the vampire movie where everything is mist and you can only see a tree and then all of a sudden you see a vampire right in front of you. That's a very Ketu experience. The visibility range is cut down and then something suddenly appears. Ketu. That's the nature of Ketu. If it's affecting something in your chart, it will make you confused about it, and then therefore things come without foresight and happen suddenly because you couldn't see ahead in this matter. Suddenly and intensely, Ketu in a house or Ketu with a planet will make the affairs of that house and planet more sudden, more intense. And it says he's a constant smoke drinker. That's very interesting. Rahu was Pami, which means he's a drinker. And Ketu is also a Pami. Rahu is probably an alcoholic and Ketu is probably an opium addict. So they're Dhumapa means he's inhaling smoke. That means he's smoking opium, marijuana, whatever. So he's taking drugs. Rahu, drinking alcohol, taking drugs. What the drug experience is like exactly the Rahu and Ketu experience. Sudden change in reality, inconceivable things being conceived. Super Rahu and Ketu. So it's so cool. This line is really cool. He's constantly drinking smoke, so his complexion is like smoke. Inhaling smoke. And then, if he's carrying weapons all the time, he probably gets into fights, right? So Shastra means he's carrying weapons. So then this is also related. Vranankita, Anga. His body is scarred. So he's covered in scars. So this means he's been subjected to violence. He's involved himself in violence. He's involved himself in fighting. Ketu is not cooperative. One of the worst things to experience is Mars and Ketu together. We had a year like that. It was 2 or 3 years ago now. Where Mars and Ketu were really close to each other for the whole year. A lot of people are having really upsetting experiences during that year, depending on whether their chart's getting hit by it. Mars and Ketu together in a birth chart in that house, the astrologer takes a deep breath to try to figure out what that's going to mean and try to explain it to the person. It's not pleasant because it's like too much of the same thing together. So just like Mars has got scars, Ketu has got scars. This means that they are not cooperative, not lovey. They get into battles, they get into fights, they get into violence. Ranankitangascha krisho. He's not fat. He's not fluffy. My daughter always says she likes to hug mommy because she's fluffy. So femininity is fluffy, it's soft. Ketu is freaking hard and sharp and cold. Maybe hot because of the fierce redness. But Ketu is not fluffy. Ketu has sharp edges. It hurts. You don't want to embrace it. It's thin. It's emaciated. The other effect of Ketu will be emaciation, reduction of kapha because of the increase of pitta. Ketu will increase pitta and reduce kapha. So in other words, it will increase acids and metabolism, which will cause decrease in fat, which could be used well to your advantage. And cruel, Nishamsha. Ketu is cruel. Ketu is unforgiving and cruel. Now let's just finish up these other two, which are pretty fast, and then I'll see if anybody can give me a recap of any good questions at the end. So now there's one more verse where he explains a couple of other things about Rahu and Ketu that he had explained previously about other planets. Where he says, Shisham cha jirnavasam tamastu ketur Ridbhajanam vivida chitrapatam pradishtam. So this means that Rahu uses lead and wears old, dilapidated clothes. Ketu uses clay and wears patchwork and mismatched clothes. So you remember we had this previously for every planet. What type of metal are they associated with, and what type of clothing are they associated with? So here he gives you an appendix for Rahu and Ketu. Mercury was also lead. But Mercury's reason for lead is the malleability of it and the ease with which it is shaped. Rahu's use for lead is the heaviness of it and the baseness of it. And he wears old, dilapidated clothes. So this is another way that you can detect Rahu influence. It's again like Saturn in this way. It's messy and not concerned with appearance. Neither of these planets is concerned with how they look. So Rahu is wearing old clothes that are worn out, ripped. So again, if you, like, it's rebellious, it's heretical. Well, think of rebellious, heretical people. Well, punk rock, punkers, and everything, and every subculture of punk, every branch of the punk thing, or every genre that punk influenced. What kind of clothes do they wear? That's what kind of clothes that Rahu would wear. A lot of rips, dark colors, or gruesome looking things. And Ketu. Listen, Ketu is patchwork mismatched. So, you know, punks love to have patches on their clothes. And they love to have their clothes look like weapons. So whether they get influenced by Rahu or Ketu or both, it's visible in their fashion. The kind of fashion that very, very rebellious people are drawn to, it either looks militarized, or it looks very ripped, like they got it out of the garbage, or patched up. So Ketu is patchwork mismatched clothes. You might make a mistake of thinking that it's like Venus if you just read the Sanskrit. But Venus is like patterned clothing with a lot of pattern to it and multicolors. But Ketu is, you're wearing one piece from this set and another piece from that set and another piece from another set. You got one thing that's got polka dots. You got one thing that has plaid. You have one thing that's, you know, just mismatched, or in one cloth. There's many, many things that are sewn together to make it. It's a Ketu garment. And Ketu uses clay. It's more dirt oriented. Don't know what else to tell you about that. Clay. Now, finally, we'll cover this. This is one thing that was mentioned for the other planets that was not mentioned for Rahu and Ketu, so now the author wants to put it in. How do they relate to the other planets? It says, Mitrani Vitshani Stas Tamasur Dvayos tu Baumasamo Nigadito Ripavascha Seisha. For both of the dark ones, Tamasur Dvayos, for both of the dark ones, Rahu and Ketu. Then Vit, Sunny, and Sita, which is Mercury, Saturn, and Venus, are Mitra, friends. Mars is Sama, neutral. And the rest, which is Sun, Moon, and Jupiter, are Ripa, enemies. So basically speaking, they are in the anti-hierarchy group. Remember, there's two groups. There's the Sun's group and Saturn's group. Sun's group is the hierarchy group. It includes Mars and Jupiter. Saturn's group is the anti-hierarchy group. It includes Mercury and Venus. So you have like a monarchy group and a democracy group. Democracy group is Venus, Mercury, and Saturn. Monarchy group is Jupiter, Mars, and Sun. And these planets don't like each other to varying degrees. There's some specifics, but in general, planet from group A doesn't like planet from group B, and vice versa. Basically, the author is just telling us that Rahu and Ketu fit into the anti-hierarchical group. They get along better with Saturn, Venus, and Mercury. And they don't get along with the hierarchical planets. But because Mars is very violent and individualistic, he relates a bit to them well. So Mars comes a bit towards them to neutrality, and the other two, which is Mars, which is Jupiter and Sun, they don't get along at all with these two nodes. Moon, we generally just lump in with the same group. We treat the moon as the other version of the sun. All right, so this is everything that there is to know from Phaladipika about the basics of what Rahu and Ketu signify. Have you a question? Oh, man, the whole time I wasn't showing you anything on the screen. That's awful. Sorry about that. I forgot to switch back. Shouldn't have done that. I thought, let me try something new. I'll switch the camera back, and then I forgot to switch it. Fail. And then because I don't watch you guys chat, because it's just so distracting, probably you guys were saying you can't see it. Samurai. Bardo asks, don't understand if Ketu is angry, then how can it be asexual? What? How do you get that? I don't understand why you can't. Why, if you're angry, it must be sexual. His anger gets put into attacking things. That's why he's carrying weapons. Any other question? Epti nakshatras have no bearing on exaltation or debilitation. Get that out of your head. I know that you're listening to the people on YouTube that are telling you that it does, but it doesn't. Exaltation and debilitation has to do with signs. We don't know what signs Rahu and Ketu are exalted and debilitated in, because frankly, they're not planets. And then after the fact, some authors try to put appendixes onto the ancient texts to suggest which signs Rahu and Ketu are better, but you're better off not going that direction. And just understand that Rahu and Ketu absorb the dignity of the planets that affect them. Cough drop. Does the moon get along better with Rahu or Ketu? The moon doesn't get along well with either of them. The moon is soft. The moon is feminine. The moon is quiet. Neither of these planets are feminine. Technically, Rahu is a woman, but not a feminine woman. Neither of these planets are feminine. Neither of these planets are soft. Neither of these planets are quiet. So the moon doesn't get along with either of them. Samurai's giving a question here. Please, Ketu more like a renunciate as opposed to Rahu equals a rebel? Yeah, you can say that Rahu is... There's a common paradigm out there that Ketu is spiritual and Rahu is materialistic. It's not wrong, but it's a bit far from the base of what you should understand about Rahu and Ketu. Rahu is asatyavadi, so Rahu is externally oriented. So to say that Rahu is worldly or materialistic is close to the base of the base core thing of what Rahu is. Ketu is not really intrinsically oriented, but because it's a deha, it's pulling away the interest from the deha, which means the asat, or the physical manifestation of things. So Ketu will be dramatically, violently rebelliously antithetical to external things. When Rahu will be the opposite, violently, dramatically antithetical to theoretical, philosophical things. So the caricature of Rahu as the materialist and Ketu as the spiritualist is okay, but you always have to, each individual has a different concept of what a materialist is and what a spiritualist is. Neither Rahu and Ketu are nice guys. Neither Rahu and Ketu are self-controlled or anything like that. So make sure you understand the whole picture. Anything else? Thanks, Bomb. Samurai. Seems Rahu is on opposite side of the spectrum to that of the sun, so I wonder if it curbs some of the maleficness of the sun. Now, how would a malefic nature curb maleficness? Rahu and Ketu's nature is really not intrinsically malefic or benefic, but you can see from what they signify that they're not soft. They're harsh planets. So although they're not technically malefic or benefic, they function pretty harshly. So if you put Rahu with the sun, it's not curbing the sun. It's aggravating. Ayush, if Ketu is fallen Patita, then why is he a Shiki? Here's where you have to, which means a flag, which is a high place. Here's where you have to understand that Ketu means flag. Flag in astronomy means comet. Ketu means comets. And then the south node of the moon's orbit, it gets called Ketu because you get a comet-like effect there, which is the eclipse. Ketu doesn't represent flags or anything like that. Ketu is a flag in the sky, a red flag in the sky. In English, we would say red flag. Thank you, Om. Samurai, what constitutes a weak, strong Rahu? I answered that though. You have to look up my videos on how to constitute a weak or strong planet. Anything else? Does Ketu have drishti? No, the planets don't have drishti. Rahu and Ketu don't. Again, here's the basic problem with Rahu and Ketu. The basic problem is that horoscopic astrology, and here is where the uber nationalists are going to tune out right away. But indigenous Indian astrology is not horoscopic. Indigenous ancient Indian astrology is nakshatra and calendric. So it's all about the intersection of nakshatras and moon phases with sunrises. They also, like every culture in the world, they had a concept of 12 divisions of the year as the 12 signs. And they used it, but not horoscopically with houses and so forth. They used it for knowing when to do various functions, like we would use muhurta. It's different things that you time by the moon's muhurtas and different things you time by the sun's muhurtas. Indigenous Indian astrology is fantastic and fabulous, but it's not horoscopic. Horoscopic astrology was invented not in India. It doesn't make India's culture any less great. It's just that not everything in the world was invented in India. The concept of it is ubiquitous throughout all human culture, but the actual technology for doing it, which in those days technology means math, the actual technology for doing it was developed in Mesopotamia and Persia. Mesopotamia, in Babylonia. And so the first instances of horoscopic astrology archaeologically are found there. And why am I saying this? Oh, it gets taken, and the system that was used then was 12 signs, therefore 12 houses, whole sign houses, and 7 planets. In India, they cared a lot about eclipses in their indigenous system. And around the world also, but for some reason India cared a lot about calculated points like the nodes. So what you'll find in the records, in the historical records, is that there's always a lot of information about Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. And then there's nothing at all about Rahu and Ketu, and you scratch your head. And then all of a sudden, just like in this chapter, exactly like what happened in this chapter, there's no mention of Rahu and Ketu. Then all of a sudden there's a mention of it, and then it's like an afterthought. It gets tacked on at the end. So what happens is the people developing the horoscopic astrology afterwards, they start wanting to put in nakshatras, and they start wanting to put in Rahu and Ketu from their own original culture. So they find ways to put them in. But it's not, the quality of the information about them is not the same. If you want to see this to the extreme, look at the modern inventions. Look at Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, and all the other asteroids and things like that. Look at all these other house systems. Look at all these other concepts of the zodiac that are super modern. The quality of the information about those things is really poor, because it's just made up by modern people. There's nothing that's been passed down from centuries about Uranus and Neptune, because it wasn't involved in there. So the information that you have about it is quite shoddy or quite contradictory. One person says this, another person says there's no consensus. Or you scratch your head. Who thought of this? Same thing, to a lesser degree, it's the same exact thing with Rahu and Ketu. It's not a part of the original system. And legitimately, Rahu and Ketu are not planets. So they're not part of the architecture of what makes the astrological sky, but they are a little bit, because they create eclipses, which are important. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is the information available about Rahu, Ketu, what signs are they exalted in, what signs are they debilitated in, who's friends with what, what are they? It's not as clearly and well defined as the other 7 planets. That's basically what I'm trying to say. So you're really not, I advise you to be aware of that and not place too much certain importance upon Rahu's exaltation or Ketu's debilitation or anything like that. And try to develop ways of reading Rahu and Ketu that don't rely upon the uncertain parts. Okay? So I now have worn out my energy, so I'll end it. I'm sorry that I didn't have the visual stuff on screen most of the time. I'll see you guys in 2 days for Bhagavatam.